If you agree that some stories don't die, they just wait for the right moment to be heard, then like and subscribe, because this one's been buried for nearly 50 years. It starts with a box. Not a big one, not fancy, just old oak, sealed with military wax, the kind you'd think held medals or regrets. For decades it sat on a shelf in the Veterans Hospice, collecting dust, its label faded to near nothing. Sable, E. Classified property. Do not open. The staff called it a joke, a relic of a man who used to mumble about iron protocols and clearance prime. Nobody paid much attention. Not until the morning he didn't wake up, and someone finally opened it. Inside were metals no one had ever seen before. Their metal dark as burnt silver, their engravings sharp and unfamiliar. A folded letter lay beneath them, stamped with an insignia that didn't belong to any known division. The signature read, General Eric Vaughn, Defense Command, Shadow Division. That was the moment the story began to breathe again. The moment people realized the quiet, unassuming veteran in room 12B might have been more than a footnote. Her name was Elena Sable, though back then, they only knew her as Iron Sable. The records said she'd vanished in 2028, presumed dead during the Black Sector incursion. But the letter hinted otherwise, a classified operation, a squad that never existed, and a betrayal that rewrote the rulebook on command authority. I wasn't supposed to see that letter, but I did. The ink had bled slightly, the paper crisped with age. It wasn't written like a military memo. It was personal, addressed to whoever found it. It said, if you're reading this, the system has failed again. They'll come looking for what's inside. Don't trust anyone above Clearance Delta. Tell them Iron Sable was never a myth. Tell them the city was saved once, by a ghost they buried. From there, I had to know. Everyone in the squad remembered her differently, if they remembered her at all. Some said she was an observer, a tech analyst who got lucky. Others swore she was a legend, a prototype of the human directive program that vanished before deployment. But there was one consistent thread. The day she walked into Echo Division, nobody knew who she really was. She'd been 27, young, calm, and out of place in a room full of soldiers twice her size and half her restraint. The squad had just come off a week-long blackout op in Sector 12. They'd lost half their people, morale was shot, and the last thing anyone wanted was a civilian tagging along. She didn't flinch under their stares, didn't react to the sarcasm or the cold shoulder. Just watched, quiet as static before a storm. Kale, the sergeant, called her tourist before she even introduced herself. Rhea, the lieutenant, said she was just there to write a report. No one believed she'd last a day, but there was something about her eyes. They were steel gray, the kind of color that didn't belong to someone who'd lived an easy life. I pieced it together from mission logs, fragments of radio chatter, and one black box recovered from the ruins of the Echo outpost. The transmissions were mostly static, but every now and then, her voice broke through. Calm, controlled, unshakable. Route Omega active. Grid realignment in 30 seconds. Brace yourselves. That was Iron Sable. No hesitation, no fear. But to understand her story, you have to understand what Echo Division was. They weren't heroes. They were the cleanup crew, the ones sent to erase what shouldn't exist. After the first drone revolt, the government created Echo to operate where laws didn't apply. When something went wrong in the city's shadows, Echo was sent to silence it. Elena wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't even on the roster. The documents list her as an external consultant, but the chain of command recognized her clearance before they even processed her ID, which means someone, somewhere, very high up, had given her access no civilian should ever have. The night the attack came, everything changed. The squad was resting at Base 12 when the alarms hit. A full-scale drone incursion. Kale's report says he tried to lock down communications, but the system overrode him. That's when Elena stepped in. The footage shows her approaching the main console, placing a chip against it. Every terminal froze, every camera rebooted. And then the voice, the same one that appeared decades later on the sealed black box recordings, filled the air. Authorization recognized. Codename, Iron Sable, clearance level, Prime. No one in the building had ever heard of Clearance Prime. It wasn't supposed to exist. The hierarchy ended at Alpha, but there it was, glowing across every monitor, turning the base's emergency lights white instead of red. What followed was chaos, not from the drones, but from disbelief. Kale's voice cracked over the radio, demanding an explanation. Rhea hesitated mid-command, staring at her like she'd just witnessed a ghost wearing a soldier's skin. But Elena didn't explain. She acted. Within seconds, she rerouted the base's defense systems, taking control of automated turrets, surveillance drones, and satellite uplinks. Resources Echo didn't even have clearance to access. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, the drone swarm was vaporized, and the sky burned orange above the sector. And then, silence. No reports filed. No debriefs. The entire incident was scrubbed from the record. The only evidence left was her code name, and that sealed oak box. So why was her file buried? Why did Command pretend she never existed? The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Iron Sable wasn't just a soldier. She was the failsafe. The contingency they activated when Command itself lost control. The kind of operative who didn't take orders. She was the order. The last entry in her transmission log reads, like a farewell. Mission parameters achieved. Locking prime protocol. If you find this, don't look for me. There's nothing left to save. That was 2028. No one ever saw her again. But that letter, the one in the box, wasn't meant for Command. It was meant for us. For whoever still believed the system could protect itself. And maybe that's why, even now, as I hold the faded insignia in my hand, I can't shake the feeling that Iron Sable isn't gone. Maybe she's just waiting, like the rest of her story, to wake up again. They said the box was empty when they returned it to archives, but that was a lie. I know because I was there when the alarms went off. 2 nights after the old man's funeral, the hospice security feed caught a figure slipping through the corridors. A woman, lean, hooded, moving like she'd memorized the place decades ago. No prints, no ID, no entry logs. Just a faint static flicker as she passed each camera, and then one single frame before the feed collapsed into noise. A flash of metallic light across her wrist, right where the clearance prime insignia was supposed to appear. By morning, the oak box was gone, along with the letter, the medals, and the logbook that recorded her name. The official report called it a break-in by unidentified personnel, but the building staff said otherwise. They said the power went out exactly at 2:17 a.m. Every door lock clicked open at once, and the intercom whispered something, a woman's voice repeating a single word, prime. Then, silence. The government sealed the hospice by sunrise, citing a biohazard incident. It was cleaner that way. Easier to hide the truth when everyone's wearing masks and carrying scanners. I got inside the next night, before they could erase everything. The hall still smelled of disinfectant and fear. In the basement security office, the servers were half melted, like someone had forced a power surge from within. But there was one terminal still running on backup power. It displayed a single access log from the night of the breach. The user ID read, Sable, 7A, a designation retired over 20 years ago. I copied what I could before the data corrupted. The files weren't large, only a few megabytes, but the encryption was like nothing I'd seen before, layered with counter-access loops that rewrote themselves whenever you got too close. Buried in the code was a signature pattern, voice data, faint but distinct. Female, late 20s, steady cadence, no accent identifiable by modern AI systems. The machine tagged it with one chilling classification, active operative detected. If Elena Sable had died in 2028, something, or someone, was still carrying her digital fingerprint. I tracked the network signal that accompanied the data breach. It wasn't a random attack. It moved like a professional extraction, hopping from dead relay towers to abandoned military satellites, rewriting its own trail as it went. I followed the fragments across the grid for days. Most paths looped into voids, empty frequencies that hadn't been touched since the blackout wars, until one reply pinged back from an old underground channel registered to the Defense Command. The coordinates pointed directly under the ruins of Sector 12. That was where she'd saved Echo Division, the same battlefield that burned orange against the night sky, the one they said had been sterilized and buried. But when I overlaid the coordinates, I found something still pulsing beneath the surface, an automated system running on ancient power lines. The last message sent from that location was logged 3 days ago. Iron Sable / prime protocol reinstated. Whatever was sleeping under Sector 12 had just woken up. I don't know if it's her, flesh and blood, ghost in the wires, or something in between, But the world's defenses are stirring again. There have been unexplained power surges near the old command grids, drone patrols reporting phantom IFF tags labeled Sable, and encrypted radio chatter across dead frequencies repeating the same phrase every midnight. Prime status acknowledged. No one at command will admit it. They're calling it a glitch, a residual echo from an old AI testbed. But those who fought in Echo Division, the few still alive, have started leaving town. Some say they've seen her reflection in street cameras, her figure flickering for half a second before the feeds reboot. Others claim she's hunting something, or preventing something from being unleashed. I think about the box often, about the medals that weren't in any record, the letter signed by a general no one remembers. Maybe it was never meant to be buried. Maybe it was a warning, a key waiting for someone desperate enough to turn it. And now that it's gone, I can't help but feel the city itself is holding its breath. Iron Sable was more than a name. She was a system, a signal, a safeguard built to activate when everything else failed. And now, after all these years, that signal is alive again, humming beneath our streets, whispering through our networks, preparing for whatever comes next. The city had learned to sleep through alarms, to ignore the faint hum of surveillance grids, but now it couldn't. Something had awakened beneath Sector 12, something alive in the wires, in the shadows, in the empty streets where no one dared to go. The terminals still flickered with the faint metallic shimmer she had once worn on her wrist, and across every screen the code name glowed like a ghostly warning. Iron Sable, Clearance Prime. Reports began pouring in. Drone patrols caught scrambling across sectors where no orders had been issued, encrypted channels lighting up with ghost messages, and civilians swearing they'd glimpsed a figure moving faster than any human could. Command labeled it a system glitch, a residual echo from old protocols. But anyone who had been near Echo Division, anyone who remembered Sector 12, knew better. She had returned. She wasn't waiting. She was in motion. The signals traced her across the old defense network, popping from abandoned satellites to decommissioned bunkers. Every location she had touched before, every mission, every classified operation she had ever run, seemed to pulse with her presence again. Then came the final ping, a message that carried a voice pattern so unmistakable that even a machine recognized it. Mission parameters achieved. Contingency secured. No one else heard it. But I did, reverberating through the city's forgotten circuits like a pulse in the dark. I went to the ruins of Sector 12 the night after. The streets above were empty, the rain falling in steady sheets, reflecting the occasional flicker of a distant emergency light. In the tunnels below, silence ruled, broken only by the faint mechanical hum of automated systems still obedient to an operator long gone from the living world. The air smelled of metal and damp earth, and in the dim light, I saw it, etched into the wall of the command bunker. I am Iron Sable. The letters glowed faintly, almost imperceptibly at first, but enough to chill the spine. It wasn't graffiti. It wasn't a message left for me. It was a signature, a mark of presence, proof that she had not only survived but retained control, even under layers of secrecy and decades of erasure. Somewhere beneath the city, she was awake, watching, waiting, and from the way the systems responded to her signal, it was clear she had been preparing for this moment for a long time. I left the tunnels and stepped into the rain-soaked streets. The city seemed smaller somehow, fragile, unaware of what lurked beneath it. The hum of surveillance grids felt heavier, alive, almost reverent. It was more than fear, it was anticipation. Command could try to cover it up, civilians could ignore the signs, but the world had changed the moment she activated again. Iron Sable was more than a soldier, more than a name in a classified document. She was a force, a failsafe, a ghost, and a living protocol wrapped in flesh and memory. She remembered everything the city had forgotten, every betrayal, every mission, every life she had saved. And now, after all these years, she had returned to act, to finish what had never truly ended. Some stories don't die. They lie dormant, waiting, and when the time comes, they rise. Unstoppable, unseen, unforgettable. The city would never be the same, and neither would anyone who crossed her path, anyone who knew her name. Iron Sable, Clearance Prime. Her presence was no longer a legend whispered in files. It was a living, breathing force, ready to reshape everything around it. And in that realization, I understood. She hadn't come back for recognition. She had come back to ensure the city survive, the way she always had, silent, relentless, and untouchable. The story had reached its climax, but the world itself was only just beginning to feel the weight of her return.